hospital, and do you want to tell us a little bit more about what that was all about?
Yeah, so basically I went in for some testing at a hospital that's local to me in New Westminster.
Hmm.
And I was told by the examiner that my results would be ready in 7 days. So after 7 days came and gone, it's been 10 days, no one has called me about my test results. I thought I would go to the hospital and find out what my results were. I called the hospital first to make sure that is the protocol, since I don't have an ordering physician. So right now with COVID, it's really hard. You walk in and there is a hand sanitizing station where they put a nurse there, and what the nurse will do is they'll screen you for COVID. They'll ask you if you had a fever, all the routine questions, right?
Right. Hmm.
So I say the same thing to her. I said, hey, I got a test done 10 business days ago. They said my results would be ready in 7 days. I'm just here to gather my results. And she looks at me and she says, we don't have it.
Hmm.
And keep in mind, this nurse she's not a clerk. She does not have a laptop in front of her. She is standing there with hand sanitizer. And I said, well, I was told by the operator that I would have to come in person to get the results. And she looks at me and she says, you can keep talking, but no matter what you say will not change the results of this. We don't have your result. You need to leave. And I wasn't expecting that whatsoever. I tried to explain to her, I was like, the examiner said, by 7 days my results would be in, and she said, no, if you had come in 2 days, then we would have had your results. But it's been 10 days, we don't have it anymore.
Okay.
Which makes no sense, right?
Hmm.
So I tried to explain to her my situation, how I don't have a physician in the hospital to get the results from, and then she just kept saying, you can keep talking, but it's just going to be a waste of time because it's not going to change my mind and you can't come in. So by that point, I took an Uber home, didn't get my results that day, and I lodged a complaint with the hospital. But I did eventually get my result, which was a really crucial one in a diagnosis. So she was standing in the way of that. For what reason, I don't know.
Do you think that it was just a matter of misunderstanding, or was this like, what do you think it was all about?
I don't think it was a misunderstanding. Going over it with my nursing friends, no one has ever heard of such treatment. I wasn't even allowed to talk to the department that did the exam in the first place, or the testing. I was not able to talk to my doctor. She stood in the way of me entering the hospital. I didn't even get to step foot to talk to a clerk.
Wow. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I sincerely apologize to hear that. Um, yeah, things, and I'm not sure too how to go about that, because on one hand, I'm thinking maybe it was extra safety procedures. On the other hand, I'm thinking, well, it was just a matter of, if she didn't have a computer in front of her, how could she possibly know who you were and to be able to tell you that your information are not in, unless she has this incredible memory where she remembers every single patient that go through that hospital.
Yeah, it wasn't her role to be looking at my test results, nor was it her role. Her role was just to screen whoever has COVID to not be able to come in, and
Right.
I wasn't allowed to come in, even though
Right.
I've been going to the hospital for the last month, really just trying to get shit figured out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I apologize for that. Okay, so we're going to move on to personal experience with racism. Would you say that aside from that situation, you have experienced racism personally?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Anything from microaggression to for verbal assaults on the streets. Yeah.
Wow. Would you care to give us one instant?
I'll give you an early one. So when I first moved here, I was 8. I was ESL for maybe about 2 years. I wasn't fluent in any way, and some kids in class accused me of stealing.
Hmm.
And I had no language to speak for myself because I actually didn't steal anything. But I got reprimanded for stealing because I couldn't defend myself, and these English-speaking kids had an upper hand on me. They could make
Hmm.
accusations without me having a voice. and that's my close. I haven't watched the video.
Or you haven't?
I
Okay.
No, I stopped watching videos of black men get murdered a few years ago. It was a conscious decision. I don't think it's good to be putting it out there, to be honest.
Hmm.
I don't think I don't think snuff films does anyone any good. Like if you need a film like that to convince you that systemic racism exists, you are either you got your blinders on your whole life or
Right.
something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like minority groups have been telling everyone for years, decades, centuries that systemic racism exists, the violence that they endure. Like, I don't need to see a video to be convinced of that. And if you need to constantly see videos of Black people dying to know, sorry, I can't help you, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Why do you think that uh, the denial is still there? Why do you think that this resistance to believe that racism is there, or that, even at workplace, like you said, people would say, "Oh no, get out of here. That didn't mean anything. That's not what he meant by it," or whatever the case might be, right? Why do you think that there's this deep in denial? Because me being a minority can relate to another minority pain, even though he's all the way down in Switzerland.
Definitely.
It doesn't make a difference to me, right? As long as I'm like, okay, oh, I can relate to that instantly. But it just seems like on the other side, when it come on the line of Caucasian people and white people, they just can't wrap their head around that.
I think they have such a hard time with it is because I think humans instinctively they like to think of themselves as
Hmm.
good people, right? So if you're a good person, how can you be racist, right?
Right.
Or if you're a good person, how can you, a lot of people are just feel a lot of guilt for not getting involved sooner. I see a lot of that happening right now.
Okay.
Like, how could I, after all these years, not seen the racism that other people are talking about? How have I not recognized it personally? And then that reflects back on them personally, and they have to stop thinking of themselves as individuals. I
Hmm.
think the individualism of North American countries such as Canada and United States really fails that because everyone wants to be puritanical, they want to be good doing,
Hmm.
but if they're complicit in racism, just may mean that they're not, and that's okay. Like me and that's okay,
Right. Right.
but for them it's very self-condemning, and for them it's awful. It's like the most hard thing that can happen is to even be complicit in racism.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to agree with that point. Um, I have to confess to something here, and it may sound super strange, but I remember when I was in grade 10, I made a friend. I made a friend. Her name was Erica. And it's funny because Erica was from the reserve. At the time, I was somewhat still fresh into the country. I have been here for a few years now, but I was somewhat still fresh. I wasn't familiar with the reserve or whatever it was. And she would tell me this, try to explain the situation to me about the reserve, about how they didn't have proper running water. The educational system is all out of whack and all the difficulties. And she's telling me this thing, but I can't see that because I'm thinking, hey, I just came to Canada. I have a house over my head. I have a roof over my head, fresh clothes to wear. Like, what is she talking about? So I've been thinking lately if perhaps that's sort of like what, you know, Caucasian people, white people may like the good ones, not the racist one, because I feel like they know what they're doing. But like the
Yeah.
good one, like my friends, for instance, I feel like if that was kind of like this obliviousness that they lived in, the same obliviousness that I sort of demonstrated to Erica when she told me about the reserve, or when I wasn't listening because I was like, what are you talking about? This is Canada. Everybody, what do you mean you don't have drinking water? You,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Do you think that maybe that's kind of like what it is, this detachment and the fact that it's not taught in school at all?
Yes, absolutely. I was talking about some indigenous issues with a colleague 2 days ago, and he said, you know what, honestly, I just don't know enough about the situation. And and he admitted to his ignorance, so he can't
Hmm.
talk on it, which is
Right,
great because, if you don't know it, don't have an opinion on it kind of thing,
right,
right?
right.
But yeah, I definitely do see that because it's not something that they're confronted with every day. They don't see it, they don't
Right.
struggle with it. So
Hmm.
to them, it's almost like it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, and I almost feel, I don't know, a part of me, I can't get mad at my friends because they don't know. We learn about the Holocaust. Did you guys learn about the Holocaust? Did you cover any Black history in school or any Indigenous history in school, like in high school?
Ooh, no Black history, barely any Indigenous history, like very barely.
Okay.
Like,
How?
oh, they came over and a lot of them died, and residential schools mentioned maybe in one sentence in a textbook, and that was it.
And that was pretty much it.
That
And
was it.
how was that compared to like the Holocaust? Was that something you learned about as well? Like, did you learn about the Holocaust?
Not particularly. Everybody knows what the Holocaust is
Okay.
just because of how big an event it was, and
Okay.
but how it's remembered. But as a school curriculum, just a little blip again.
Okay. And I'm now we're going to move into homelessness test, and I want to ask you some questions regarding. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with this. Are you familiar at all with the homelessness rate of Indigenous people in Canada compared to say white Canadians?
I do know that it's over presented. Indigenous peoples make up about 4 or 5% of the population, but they do make up about 10% of the homelessness population.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I actually was reading one out of every 15 Indigenous person will wind up homeless, compared to one out of every 100 Canadian will wind up homeless. So that's like a huge
Sometime
gap.
in their life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, what do you think that we can do, or that Canada can do to resolve some of this problem?
I honestly think that Canada would have to want to resolve the situation. I don't think they do.
You don't think they
I
want
don't.
to?
I don't know. Not in their actions. I don't think that they do. So I think for Canada to resolve the homelessness issue, they would want to have to actually care.
Okay. And you don't think they
Yeah.
care about it. What make you say
Oh
that? What
no.
make you think they don't care?
Having worked in the downtown east side I mean, I was only there for 2 years, but it is my community, and there has been no action. Homelessness just the number goes up every year, and there's a lot of talk while everyone keeps dying, right? They
Mhm.
talk, we die, and then it's just there's no actions taken. So, I mean, if they say they care, then show me with action, right?
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. Would you then say that they've forgotten their Indigenous people, or is that too soon to call that yet?
I don't think they've forgotten, because forgotten seems like something that was missed, whereas I think for them it's easy to ignore it, as long as everyone is are able to operate even on a very poverty level, struggling, but as long
Hmm.
as there's no big kerfuffle, a
Hmm.
big uprising about it, and they can just kind of turn a blind eye, then they're happy to. I
Hmm.
feel like it's intentional. Their forgetting is intentional.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when I mean, I practically grew up here. So just looking back now with Canada having all this issue at home from homelessness, I think it's estimated that over 1 million children go to bed every hungry every day in Canada, right?
Hmm.
So from homelessness to the people living beyond the poverty line, and even able-bodied like qualified trade workers or qualified people that have done something in school education wise, not being able to find a job. Yet and still, we see Canada continuing to bring in an influx of immigrants. My question to you is, should Canada continue to bring in more immigrants, and why do you think that has been their approach? Why are they bringing in more immigrants when we have people here that can use that assistance?
Well, the people who are unemployed, who are able-bodied,